Perfect mess is my perfect mess. Perfect mess is my perfect mess.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Perfect Mess Podcast. I am your host, Ray Molina. I really want to thank you for stopping by for episode number 2. Today, I want to just jump right into it, okay? The first episode got some really good feedback. And I had a lot of people messaging me talking about it was so revealing for a first episode, but they really appreciated me being very candid about my life and about who I am and how this whole thing that we're listening to or watching on YouTube came about. And I want to thank everybody for that. But I also want to make something very clear. I know I gave up a lot of information, and that was intentional. I needed to do that because I didn't want people to think that this was just another podcast, where I was going to be some funny guy, trying to be the next YouTube sensation or the next podcast sensation. I wanted you guys to get a personal feeling regarding what I have gone through in my life, and to get some direction as to where this is going to be going. And hopefully, like I said, somewhere down the line, this is something that can help you. So with that being said, let's dive right in. I want to talk about my dad again, and I want to talk about roles and how people play different roles in our lives. I don't want anybody to think that from hearing the last episode that I don't love my dad. Now, I'm going to be very clear. There was a time when I can say as a young man, I did hate him. I hated everything about him. I hated the things that he put me and my family through. I even hated what he was doing to himself. But I was a young boy. I was a kid, and then I was into my young adulthood. I was still having these issues. But as I've gotten older, even before I had my kids, when I was getting ready to get married, I wanted to make sure that I somehow made amends with him so he could be a part of that process. And it was something that I told my grandfather and my grandmother that I would do, not just for them, but for me as well. So it was something that I did. We made amends. It had been years. I think it was 14 years at the time that we hadn't talked. But we did that, and it was very important to me. It lasted, maybe 5 years, and then we hit a spot where it just got really rocky again. Those old stories, those old demons from the past, they have this thing about rearing their ugly head when you think everything's cool, everything's good, and you've made amends, and for some reason sometimes they just come back, and that's what happened. So this whole second podcast, I want to talk about this. I love my dad. I want to be very clear about that. I love him to death. I have forgiven that man for everything that you heard me talk about. I shared it because it's part of my story. All right? But everything that you heard, I forgave him for. I never even asked for an apology. I just got older. I grew. I got married. I had children. And I just let go. Because honestly, if you hold on to something for that long, it just holds you down. It ends up being something that you're holding, and it becomes to be a barrier and a blocker of all your blessings in your life. It just stops everything. So I gave it up. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't hold on to all that. So I forgave him. And I never asked for an apology. But I love him. I'm going to tell you some great things about my father, okay? My musical side, I got from him. My dad is an amazing singer. He used to sing in a couple of bands. He sang in the church choir. That man could hit every note of the classic song Reasons. If you play that song, that man will hit every note of that song. Every note. To a T. And for those of you who know that song, yes, even the high note, even that extremely high note, he can hit it with no problem. I get my musical side from him. I never planned on doing music. It just happened. So I definitely get that from him. He's also an extremely talented artsy type guy. He has a history of doing custom cars in San Jose. He was one of the first people to do custom paint jobs on lowrider vehicles in San Jose, putting hydraulics on cars, just completely customizing cars, like manufacturing parts and taking doors off and putting different hoods from other cars on cars and changing tail lights. And I mean, this guy can take the average looking car and make it look like a spaceship because his mind just does these things. And that's him. And again, I have a graphic design background. That's one of my businesses. I get that from him. I know I get that from him. The other thing is, he's hilarious. Anybody who's been around him will tell you that man should have been a comedian. He is funny. He is hilarious. Almost too much where you have to kind of tell him to pipe down. But the guy is just hilarious. He's to the point where he'll laugh at his own jokes, and if you're not laughing, you're going to laugh when you see how hard he's laughing at his own jokes. Like, that's how funny this guy is. I also get that from him. I'm a jokester. I used to get in trouble in school, not because I was a bully or because I was a troublemaker. I used to get in trouble because I was a class clown. On all my report cards, you've seen at the bottom, he's a great student, does this, does that. He has to work on his clowning around in class. That was an issue for me. I also got that from him. Another thing that I got from him was his emotional side, my emotional side. I am very emotional. I wear it on my sleeve. I'm proud of it. I do not hide anything. And if you've watched or listened to the first podcast, you got that vibe from me. I know you did because I let it fly. And I got that from him because he loves hard. He loves hard. But he also has a side where when he's angry, he gets angry just as hard. So these are some things that make this man up. And I want to tell you, aside from everything that we discussed in my childhood, these are some amazing qualities he has. Again, I love my father. I do. I wish things were different when I was growing up. I do. But they weren't. They are what they are. And we can't change that. We can't go back and fix that. But we can move forward. We can forgive. And a big thing about that is you have to forgive somebody when they can't forgive themselves. And that's where we are right now. I have forgiven him for everything that you heard me discuss on podcast 1. But he hasn't forgiven himself. He cannot let go of the past. He feels the need to explain everything. And we're past that. I'm in my 40s now. I have kids. One of them's going into middle school now. We're so far past that. And he struggles with getting past that. And I know it's the demons, man. It's your demons. We all have them. If you don't think you have them, you do. Trust me, we all do. We all have these demons that we battle. Yours may be different from mine, but we all have them. But it's these demons. They have this thing, man, where if you let them, You let them torment you. They're going to torment you, and they're going to bring you back. And I think that's what he struggles with. So in turn, there's always this friction. There's always this, we can't seem to get past those years. Because I've told him, I don't care about those years. I care about right now. I want you to have a relationship with my children. You have a clean slate. Because I made it clear to him. Very clear. I'm never going to talk about the things that went on between you and me in detail to my children. They don't need to know that. You have a clean slate. They just need to know Grandpa. They just need to know Grandpa. They need to know that you're funny, that you love them, and that you're hanging out with them, and you're telling them stories from when you were a kid and growing up and teaching them things. That's what they need to know. And we can't do it. We can't seem to get there. It's just, he's a very, very stubborn man. Stubborn. But I wanted to start this podcast off by saying, for those of you that heard or watched that last episode, the first episode, I love him. I do, with all my heart. My dad's childhood was interesting because he grew up in a very difficult time in San Jose, in the Bay Area. He grew up during the time where there was still segregation. My dad used to get bused to Oak Grove High School when they were the only dark-skinned kids that were going there. That school used to be nothing but white kids, and my dad would be on a bus with blacks and Latinos. And he told me it was really hard. It was hard to avoid fights. It was hard to avoid arguments. It was hard to avoid everything. And that really, really weighed heavy on him growing up. My dad and me look exactly alike, for those who don't know. But my dad is 10 shades darker than me. He's a lot darker than me. But if you put aside, or for instance, if you were to run into my dad at a gas station or something, you would know that's my dad because we look exactly alike. But he's darker. So my dad grew up during a time where it was tough, man. It was tough. I can't even imagine what it would be like to grow up like that. He was the oldest child of his siblings. We had my Aunt Vera, my Aunt Yolanda, and my Uncle Isaac, who passed away. But he was the big brother. And for those of you who are the oldest child in the house, you know, a lot of times you get the brunt of the discipline. When the younger kids get out of line and act up, you usually catch the brunt of the discipline. Because, especially back then, you're looked at more of as another parent. So when dad's at work and mom's trying to handle stuff, you're looked at as, hey, you got to keep your siblings in line. So anytime his siblings would get out of line, he would get the brunt of it. From the stories that I know from my family, he caught a lot of flack. And again, that has an effect growing up. That has an effect of damaging you to some extent, to where it's hard to get past that as you get older. You know, you have these things that you're dealing with and these memories, like the memories I shared with you guys. So that was something else that he dealt with. He met my mom really young in high school. My mom used to go to a school called Samuel Ayer, which is a school that's in Milpitas, California. And it's no longer there anymore. It's now, I believe it's a community center now, and I think Milpitas High. It used to be Milpitas High, and then they moved it. But my mom went to Samuel Ayer. She graduated from there, and my dad met her and fell in love. they were kids. Apparently, the story is he was going on a double date with a friend of his. His friend was supposed to go on a date with my mom, and my dad was supposed to end up going on that same date with an aunt of mine, my mom's sister. And when he seen my mom, he said, "Nah, man." And he's like, "I'm going to hang with her." And they swapped. And so he ended up, when he seen my mom, apparently he was just head over heels. And they ended up going on that first date together, which wasn't planned. And they fell in love. That was really young. My dad had me, my mom was 19. My dad was 18 when they had me. And that's really young, man. I had my kids when my first son was born when I was 34 or going on 35. And then my youngest was 2 years later. So 37. That's when I had my kids. I can't imagine being an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old that have a son. And then he was in the service. He went to the Marines and, was trying to do the right thing. I don't know what happened in the Marines. I do know that he came back a lot tougher than he was. Definitely more disciplined, but definitely a lot more hard around the edges. But they were young and they had me, and my mom, for the most part, was taking care of me while he was at boot camp. And when he got back, things got rocky and whatnot, like everything that I told you. But I want to talk about their relationship for a minute. Now, let's go back to episode 1 where I tell you they got married a second time. As I got older, I started to get really mad about that, upset. Why did they get married a second time? They should have known better. I'm so mad. He had these problems. My mom had these problems. So stupid that they got back together. But you know what? As I got older, you have no idea, or I had no idea, how much they loved each other. When they were kids, had no idea of that thing that my dad saw with my mom when he first went to the movies with her, and how he fell head over heels with her. You have no idea how that felt for him, and how much my mom fell in love with him. And when that happened for the second time, when they got remarried, maybe they were thinking about those times, like maybe we can get it fixed. Maybe we can do it right. I don't know. But who am I to tell these two people not to love each other or not to try again? I mean, heck, they met when they were in high school. They were kids. And then I think back to my relationship, my ex-wife, with my situation. Me meeting her when I was 12. 13. I was 12. Me meeting her when I was 12. And remembering how head over heels I was. I didn't grow up in an area that had Filipino women, Filipino girls. When I transferred to this school, there were so many Filipino girls, Asian girls, that when I saw her, I lost it. I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. She was so beautiful. And I fell in love with her. I think about that, and I try to step back and think, that must have been my dad. That must have been my mom. So as I got older, I forgave them, because maybe they're thinking in the back of their head about those times, like, we got to be able to make this work, right? Right? And you know when that was more evident? My wedding day. I was a little nervous because, my dad was going to be there. My mom was going to be there, and they hadn't seen each other in years. But everything was smooth. And then when we got past all this, the ceremony and everything, and then the dancing start, I looked over, and my mom is sitting on a ledge like this right here. Sitting up on a ledge, and my dad is over there, standing in front of her with his arms around and looking up at her, asking her to dance. And my mom's like, I don't really want to dance, but she had this half smile, and my dad had this little half smile like he was, and here I am going, no, not again. But it hit me at that moment. There it is. There it is. I see that look. It's right there. I see it in both their eyes. They know it didn't work 2 times. They know better than to do a 3rd time. At least I think they do. They know better than to do a 3rd time. But the look is still there. It was never more clear to me. Pretty amazing, right? My dad's role, let's talk about roles now. My dad's role in my life, because we didn't play catch, we didn't go to ball games, we didn't go to concerts, I think we did a handful of vacations, and they were always really rocky. But my dad's role in my life, unfortunately, was to show me the other side of being a father, of how not to deal with things, of how not to handle my temper, of how not to be there for my family. And it's unfortunate, but that was his role, because there was no other role that he played. Let me put it to you this way. I've never been into like guys who are speakers, for instance, like Tony Robbins. One night I got to watch a documentary about Tony Robbins, and I said, you know what, I'm going to watch. I got to see what's up with this guy. I said, he's a motivational speaker. I'm curious, how legit is this guy? And I watched this documentary, and I'll tell you right now, it hit home. And I believe the documentary is called I'm Not Your Guru. If you go to Netflix, I highly suggest you watch it. It's pretty intense, and I was never really hip to him. I always knew, I think we all know about him, but I was never like seeking a podcast from him. I was never seeking tickets to go see him speak, but I watched the documentary. He said one key thing, well, he said a bunch of key things, but he said one key thing that hit home for me. And he told this young woman got up in the crowd, and she expressed how she hated her father because he was a drug addict and how he ruined his relationship with his family. And Tony Robbins says, my mom beat me. My mom beat me to a pulp all the time. I realized my mom's fear was I was going to be leaving. She was afraid I was going to leave her, and she was lonely. My mom loved me. He said, and I understood that. My mom showed me what being a terrible mom, an abusive mom, is, and taught me to find a woman who was the opposite of that, a woman who was nurturing, who was loving, who was the complete opposite. So I knew what I wanted because I didn't want that. But she loved me. And he told this young girl, he said, you hate this man for all these things. Those are the reasons why you have to love him. If you're going to hate him, you got to love him for those same things, because he played his role. He showed you the man that you don't want to end up with, that you don't want to marry, the man that you run from. He showed you that. So you don't, if you're smart and you take that lesson, if you're smart, you don't go and make the same mistake because you've been there. So if you're going to hate somebody, you love them for the same thing because they played their role. And man, did that resonate with me. And that's how I feel about my father. I don't hate him. I love him. Because I am a great father. Anybody who follows me on Instagram or any social media platform, or anybody who knows me personally, like really knows me, knows I do everything that I need to do for my kids and then some. I am trying to be my kid's hero. My dad showed me the opposite of that. It's very unfortunate that that was the case, but I took that lesson and I said, I'm never going to be that. I am never going to be that. I'm going to be the opposite of that. So much to the point where it's going to blow people's minds because they know where I came from, because they know my story, and they can't believe that I didn't let it destroy me and make me a terrible person. So if you're listening and you have a hate, just a hatred for a family member, your mom, your dad, whatever it may be, think about that. If you're going to hate these people for something that happened to you when you were a child or when you were a kid or a young adult, you got to love them for those same things, especially if you're in a better area or better situation in your adulthood. Because that means you took that lesson and you said, man, not me. I'm breaking the chain. And that's the thing. The chain has to be broken. It starts with you. Starts with me. It's up to us. My dad couldn't do that with his childhood. My dad used his childhood as a crutch. Anytime things would go wrong, he'd say, I was never taught to be a dad. I was this, I was that. My dad did this, my mom did this. He continued to use that as a crutch his entire life, to the point where it has crippled him from moving forward now. We still to this day can't get past that because he continues to live back in the past. I don't know. It's impossible for me to know all the truths of his childhood. It's impossible. I do know some of it, and I do know that it was rocky, but it's impossible for me to know all of it. But when you look, there's a point, we hit a point in our life where we become adults, okay? Into our 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is, where you know right is right and wrong is wrong, regardless of what we've been through. And if you continue to use the things that were wrong for you in your past into those latter parts of your life, it becomes your fault now. Because even if you were to argue with someone about that, you're arguing and still telling somebody, this is why I'm like this. Right there, that tells you, you know what's wrong. You know there's a problem. Fix it. It becomes a point where it's a crutch. You have to let go of that crutch. You have to throw that crutch aside and say, it stops. I'm not allowing this to hold me down anymore. And unfortunately, some of us hold on to those crutches. Let's be honest. Some of us hold on. Some of us like those crutches. A lot of us need them. It's what makes us who we are. It's not healthy. It's not good for us. I'll be honest with you. There was a time where when I was going through this divorce that when I started to make the turn, I actually started thinking in my head, man, what am I going to use for fuel once I get better from this? Like I need some turmoil. I need some hurt. I need some pain. No, you don't. No, you don't. Once you get through something, you got to find it inside you, the will to continue to be that person, the will to continue to strive to be that person that you're envisioning. And once that happens and you get past that, you have to be able to find a way to dig deep and continue to get better. You have to. A lot of people can't do that. They need that. They need that crutch. Because when things go bad, they can pull it out of the closet and say, "Hey, look, this is why I am the way I am. And there's my excuse." It's not acceptable. You can't do that. Because you continue to hurt everybody in your life. You continue to go through and just affect everybody in your life. Your family, your kids, your wife, your husband, the people you work with, the people that you interact with every day. It affects everybody. My kids, the few times that they've been around my dad, they have thought he was absolutely hilarious. But you can also see with my dad that he is good with kids for a certain amount of time, and then there's a point where he kind of runs out of things to do and he feels very uncomfortable, and he doesn't look like he's comfortable around kids. And I don't know what it is, but I did notice that, like he struggles with that. Those are the times when they were around. I'd be like, "Hey guys, come over here. Let grandpa rest. Let him watch TV, or, give him a little break, But I don't know. He's very uncomfortable, and I assume that's why, another reason why he wasn't very good at being a father with me. Just not comfortable. And he'll tell you, because he's told me, I never learned how to be a dad. I never learned how to be a father. And I have my opinions on that, because his dad, my grandfather, basically raised me and taught me how to be a man. And I always felt like, if this guy taught me how to be a man and taught me about respect and made me the man I am today, how come he couldn't do that for you? But again, I'm his grandchild. My dad was his son, his oldest. So there's a dynamic there that I'm never going to know, because I wasn't around. So I just don't know. I just want to let everybody know that as you get older, we mature, we start our own families, we have our own businesses, we have a good job, get our own car, we get everything that we want, for the most part. There comes a point where you just say, I want peace in my life. I don't want no drama. I want to be able to say, you know what? I love this person. I don't care what happened. I just want peace. I love them for who they are. I accept them. I can't have turmoil in my life. So if this person is going to continue to live a certain way, I can't have them in my life, because it's going to be cancerous to my family and my situation. But I love them, and I don't wish no harm on them. Roles and excuses. Everybody plays a role in our life. Everybody. From the person that you meet that's in your life for a year, to the people you grew up with, to the people you're about to meet. Everybody has a role in your life. And if I can tell you one thing, is get comfortable with understanding that. And when someone leaves your life or comes into your life, start to think about what it is they're doing or what they did or didn't do for you. There's always a lesson. There's always a lesson. Like I said, I love my dad. I wish things were different. They're not. But it doesn't make me love him any less. I hope that somewhere down the line we can patch our relationship up, because we have been in the same house together. You know, when I go to my grandfather's for the holidays, you know, he's there. He doesn't stay very long. I make sure that my children go run up to him and say hi to their grandfather and give him a hug, tell him they love him. They even gave him a Christmas gift this year. But I make sure all of that. And then lickety split, he's out of there within 30 to 40 minutes of me being there. And no one seems to understand it. You know, my grandfather doesn't. My family just doesn't understand it, you know. But again, I don't know what he's dealing with. And I'm not going to pretend to know what he's dealing with, because I don't know. But that was his role. He played his role. And I'm going to leave you with this. Think about the role you're playing in people's lives. Are you a positive role? A role model? Are you someone who's being a positive in someone's life? Are you playing a positive role in someone's life? Or are you being somebody who they're going to look back like, gosh, I should have never been around this person. This person has brought me nothing but drama. Figure that out. I've had to reevaluate myself plenty of times, because trust me, as much as I tell you, you know, my father played his role, I've played my role too. I told you in the last podcast, you got to own it. And I own it. There are a lot of people in my life that I played a role with that I'm not too proud of. You have to be okay with addressing that yourself. The other thing is excuses. If you are listening or watching right now and you aren't the father you know you should be, you're not the mom you know you should be, you're not the husband, the wife you should be, and you keep saying, well, I never learned this, I never learned that, I never had a dad, or I never had a mom, or you have to stop making excuses. Because just you saying that is you acknowledging that there is a reason for you being that way, which means you know it's wrong, which is the first thing to moving forward and getting past it. You know it's wrong, now fix it. Get the help you need, whether it is to talk to somebody, whether it is to make sure to take a minute when you know you're about to lose your cool or do something that's out of character. You take a minute, bring it all back in, and regroup. Don't make excuses. Throw the crutch away. You don't need it. I got excuses up the wazoo for me to be a terrible man, for me to be a terrible father with my children. Lots of excuses. I don't use them. I don't, because I don't need to, because I know they were wrong, and I'm not going to ever make a mistake with my kids to where I look back and say, well, hey guys, I'm like that because my dad never taught me. No, I'm not going to do it. Someone handed me that crutch from the past, I gave it right back to the person who gave it to me. Sorry, don't need the crutch. You don't need it either. So don't make excuses. If you're grown and you're listening to this, which most of you are, don't make excuses for yourself. Own it and change it. It has to stop with you. When you change right now and you say, I'm not doing this no more, you change the present, the future, and the past. Let me say that one more time. When you decide to make the change and say, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to make the changes that I need to be a better father, a better husband, a better wife, a better mother, a better friend, whatever it is, you change the present, the past, and the future. Let that soak in. That's all I have. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Search on YouTube, The Perfect Mess Podcast with Ray Molina. And make sure to hit follow on Spotify. And the podcast will be hitting Apple Podcasts here shortly. So make sure to subscribe there as well. And if you want to support, you like what I'm doing here, you enjoy it, please go to patreon.com/theperfectmesspod. That is also our Instagram name, @theperfectmesspod. I love you guys. Have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are at. And I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Perfect mess is my perfect mess. Perfect mess is my perfect